So you don't have to live with PTSD and ADHD and anxiety and depression, OCD for the rest of your life. I feel like that's a lie straight from the pit of hell. And it's my goal to send it back there. And then
Yeah.
another myth would be, anxiety is your personality. And it's not. You
Uh-huh.
may be a more exuberant person or you may be more introverted, but anxiety is not your personality. I feel like it's
Mhm.
something, it's a deficiency. It's straight from the pit of hell and it's keeping you from everything that God wants you to do and to be in this beautiful life that He's given us. And so if you
Yeah.
have anxiety, don't think that you have to live with it because you don't. And I
Mhm.
would say the other biggest myth is you don't need protein. So you have to have protein for brain health.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Integrative Health Podcast with Dr. Jen. Today, we have a really exciting topic. We are going to be talking about amino acid therapy, and you have maybe not have heard this before. So definitely stay tuned to listen. And if you are listening, thank you so much for being here. I would love for you to write a review on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, anywhere you listen. Share this, and next time, maybe I will read your review. So today we're going to be with Laurie Hammer. She is a functional nutrition therapist and she is founder of the Calm Mom Method. She helps clients focus on solving the problems of things like depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other neurological conditions. She has a personal health journey of overcoming certain health challenges through holistic methods, and that drives her passion. She's dealt personally with cancer, celiac disease, bulimia, and depression. And now she lives to help others around the world. So, welcome, Laurie. So excited to have you here.
Thank you, Dr. Jen. I really appreciate being here. I love your podcast. It's amazing.
Thank you so much. And I love yours. I was a guest on yours recently.
Yes,
So it's
yes.
great. Yes. Can you share with our audience a little bit about your journey and how you have come to help other people through holistic healing?
Yeah, so my health journey started way back in like 1995 and 6. I had a bulimia issue. I'd been a bulimic for 12 years and I had been trying to get help for that. I had counseling and, some eating disorder clinics and it just didn't work. Like I just didn't meet the parameters of what was going on and I was just in a very dark, deep hole. And thankfully I was in nursing school at the time. I had a professor that kind of put her arm around me and helped me and then she ended up finding an article found its way to her house in a random GC magazine that talked about basically functional nutrition. And it was from Mill Valley, California, Julia Ross, who was helping people with addictions. And she was specifically speaking about food cravings and eating disorders. And her mantra was that you're addicted to what you're allergic to. And it intrigued me. I'm like, maybe I am sensitive to things and maybe things are triggering this craving cycle for me. And so I called out there. They had an outpatient program and I went out there for 5 days. And indeed, had celiac disease. I was very sensitive to dairy as well and a few other things and adrenal fatigue and found out that my brain was very, very depleted. And then they started using amino acid therapy with me and that lifted the depression, lifted the anxiety and stopped my craving cycle so that I could stop the bulimia habit. And it saved my life, Jen.
That's amazing. And the craving cycle. So you're basically saying that sometimes when people have these eating disorders or binge disorders or whatever, like they can't help it. They literally, it's not about self control or something like that. So can you explain, like, to maybe those that listen that have dealt with this or maybe have kids that are dealing with this or friends, like why it's not their fault?
Yeah, when your brain becomes so depleted, and there's lots of things that can deplete your brain. Maybe your brain was born depleted and it just got worse over time. Maybe there's stressful events, your nutrition isn't optimal, you're eating foods and not absorbing. Like I had celiac disease. So everything that I was eating, I really wasn't absorbing. And we didn't know about that, 30, 35 years ago, really. And so when the anxiety and the depression hit, I had really bad periods in my teenage years. So there was a lot of factors going on there that kind of led up to the depression, anxiety, and the eating disorder. And learning that when I was binging and purging, that was boosting my endorphins, that was boosting the dopamine. And so my body was craving those boosts because it was so dark and it was so down. And then as you're eating the foods like the glutamorphin It's a morphine-like effect when you're eating gluten and you're sensitive to it, or the casomorphine. Same thing with dairy, right? It gives you that morphine-like effect, and so you're getting addicted. And then around that time, they were putting a lot more chemicals and those things in our food to make us more addicted. And so I was craving all the wrong stuff, but it was
Yeah.
giving me a hit in my brain, right? It was helping those neurotransmitters to fire, but it was still depleting me at the same time. So it just kept the craving cycle going.
Yeah, I remember, oh goodness, like 20 years ago when I read Grain Brain or whenever it first came out. And I was like, wow, this blew my mind because we didn't learn about this in medical school and actually how sugar is addictive, right? That rats pick sugar over cocaine. So food can be addictive. And then when we get into these craving cycles, oh gosh, I mean, you could have really good self control, but you're up against pretty tough
Yeah,
physiological things
have to
going
eat.
on.
Not like you can avoid food.
Yeah.
So, those food addictions, they're really hard. I mean, any addiction's hard to overcome, right? But you don't have to drink, you don't have to do coke, you don't have to do heroin, right? Like it's not part of your daily sustenance.
Yeah.
So not downplaying any of that, but when you have a food addiction, it's easy to hide because you're
Mhm.
already doing that act every single day.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And you really want to focus on moms, right? Helping
Yeah.
them overcome the stress and anxiety naturally. And you have this goal and this vision of impacting a million women and helping them just thrive. Can you tell us about your mission?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much anxiety and so much depression, and I see probably 75% of the people who come to me are on at least one medication, if not more than that, for mood regulation. And it breaks my heart, Jen. I'm just thinking about it, it breaks my heart because these
Yeah.
are beautiful, beautiful women who, if somebody would actually listen to what's going on in their life, get their health history from birth until now, like,
Yeah.
let's say to ourselves, what are you depleted in? You've had this whole lifetime of depletion, and we're just going to give you a medication and like try to make these things go away. What if we actually nourished your body? Right? Because we can't
Right.
medicate away that nutrient deficiency. We actually have to fix the nutrient deficiency. So that's my goal, is to help people fix those nutrient deficiencies so they don't need to be on meds that numb them, that give them a personality that they don't have, that, stops their sexual desire for their husbands and finding all this enjoyment out of life. And we're hitting to the point where, in 89, when tryptophan was pulled from the market, because of a
Yeah.
crazy thing that happened. And then Prozac was re-released because nobody wanted it before. And then when they took off the thing that actually worked for serotonin, then those medications were re-released. And so we've had people on these medications since like the early 90s. And I'm seeing those people now, and they're so dysregulated. And they've missed so much of life. And they have other issues because, these medications that are only supposed to be used for a short time, and they weren't told of all the side effects. And now it's like horrific to get off of them. And it literally
Mhm.
breaks my heart because, this is my generation. This is my mom's generation, that I feel like we've had things stolen from us. So it is my mission to help women and to train, other practitioners in this as well. Because amino acids therapy is it's kind of like the hidden gem I feel in
Yeah.
the world that most people don't know about. So that's why I created not just my stuff for moms, but for practitioners as well. It's why I have my Mind Thrive course, because this has to get out. We have to understand, how we can balance the brain, how we can nourish the brain so that everything else just gets easier to deal with. The gut heals faster, the hormones heal faster, and so much more.
Yeah, and you brought up tryptophan. So tryptophan, it is an amino acid. So many people might not know what amino acids are. So if you can explain what those are, and I agree with you, our body does not have like Prozac or SSRI deficiency.
Right.
It's deficient in other things. And actually, those antidepressants, which are handed off, the first thing is what is handed off,
Oh,
by
yeah.
conventional medicine doctors. And I was groomed in medical school. And, when you have a whole Senate or whatever, getting kickbacks and getting money for their campaigns from pharmaceutical companies, that is what you're going to see on TV. That's what you're going to hear. We're all groomed too. So this is why we have these conversations to break the mold and actually heal how God intended us to. So what are amino acids? And, this is like working with our body, obviously.
Obviously, yeah. So amino acids make up protein. So if you have enough amino acids, it's going to make a big protein chain, right? They're the building blocks in our body. They're the building blocks of life. So everything from head to toe, hair, skin, nails, organs, enzymes, hormones, all of those things, your neurotransmitters in your brain are dependent upon amino acids. So they're foundational to everything. And so we need them in every aspect of life. And there's 8 essential amino acids. I honestly think all of the amino acids are essential because we're so depleted in everything. So that's why I'm so passionate about this.
Yeah. Now, amino acids, how do we get them? We usually get them from our food,
Right.
but what happens there? Why are we depleted?
Well, our food is depleted for one, and we're not digesting our proteins very well. And most people don't eat enough protein to start with or complete protein. So you really do need to consume animal protein to get all of the amino acids. And so we have this bent towards, vegetarianism and veganism, which I'm not totally against for a short period of time, but long term, it doesn't serve you. So I forgot where I was going with that, Jen.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I agree with that. Like and we have to look at like what culture is pushing to. If you look back and I always put on my tinfoil hat during podcasts from now, but
I
like
love it.
you have to like look at this. Like we are very smart. We are smarter than the media. We are smarter than the pharmaceutical companies. Why is this not being talked about? Well, an amino acid can't be patented, right?
Right. You
And this
can't.
is why impossible burgers and this whole vegan thing or eat beans one day a week. Like what? Like no, like eat meat. Like we have some mini cows now. We're naming them, but we are going to eat them because God gave us dominion over them. So
Yes.
anyway, like you said, our food's depleted and this is what's hard, I think. So, say you eat perfectly, you still might be amino acid deficient,
Yeah.
right? And
You
and
might.
like you said, neurotransmitters are made from those amino acids. So, we have a deficiency in amino acids that are precursor to neurotransmitters. Should we replace the amino acids or should we put you on a drug that just recycles, the serotonin? Anyway, but so why are we so deficient, I guess, now in amino acids? And how did you connect this with the anxiety and depression and eating disorders that were happening?
Right. So people who came before me are the ones that connected this. And so I've learned from them over the years. But we have to have the amino acids in order for everything else to work right. Like your fatty acids and your amino acids work together, right? We have to have our carbs, our proteins, and our fats, and all of those together. Without the amino acids, your body doesn't utilize the fats and the carbs very well. So we need to make sure that we're eating enough protein, digesting that protein. But the reason for the amino acid therapy is because we just don't get enough from our food. And when you're already depleted, it's going to take a lot of protein in order for you to get sufficient. And if your body's already compromised, it's just not going to happen. So
Yeah.
that's why I use targeted amino acids, meaning single dose, therapeutic doses, multiple times a day of amino acids to rebuild those neurotransmitters in your brain so that your serotonin does increase because that's your sunshine neurotransmitter, right? Or your GABA, which lets us go, it just lets us let the stress go, right? And so we work on the GABA. There may be endorphin issues. There may be catecholamine issues, which is like our focus, right? And so, there's amino acids that help with all of those mood regulating neurotransmitters. And once we start targeting those specifically, then magic kind of happens for almost all people. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think of it like so my car actually has a recall on its engine anyway, and it needs oil, more
Mm.
frequently. And it's kind of like when your car runs out of oil, you just like know it's like running weird. And then you test it and it's low on oil, and then you put the oil in and then it runs good again. So our brain is probably like that with
Oh, yeah.
amino acids. If you're like, oh, brain fog or concentration, and then you give it what it needs to
Yes.
run, imagine that. So, how do you know if you're deficient in specific amino acids?
Yeah. So I use a form. It's a questionnaire that divides it up into those 5 categories that I just mentioned. And so it's basically symptom based. So there's specific symptoms for serotonin deficiency, GABA deficiency, and etc. And then I send people a kit of amino acids in the mail if, we're doing a virtual appointment. And we actually open up the capsules, put them underneath your tongue, stare at each other awkwardly for like 2 minutes, And then I ask you, do you feel anything different cognitively, emotionally, or physically? And oftentimes, more than not, on that first dose, people are like, yeah, my brain feels lighter, or the blue is bluer, the green is greener. I don't feel this heaviness in my chest. And so we go through all the amino acids that I send, or as many as we need to, and find out which ones are going to work best for your brain, your body right now. And then we start with those. And it's really that simple.
That's awesome. Now, is this something that changes? So you need to like reassess it based on what they're eating or maybe their stress levels.
Yeah. So I like to work with people for at least 90 days because things are going to change because we're going to start changing diet. We're going to work on your digestion. And so your amino acid needs are definitely going to change. Once we hit that 90-day mark and you're feeling pretty good, we can stay steady for a while. But eventually you'll just forget to take them because you don't need them anymore, which is the fun part. And then you're like, oh, 6 months down the road, you're like, I feel really stressed lately. Like, hey, why don't you just start taking some GABA again and just give yourself that little boost? And then you do it for a little bit and then you don't need it again. It's just like taking a multivitamin because you want to keep the boost there. But this is just use as needed.
Okay, cool. Now, what about just taking all the amino acids? Can you do that and your body will just use what it needs? Because that's what I take amino acids just
Mhm.
every morning in my coffee. And
Yep.
I do notice a difference. I do enjoy them.
Yeah, I think, taking like perfect aminos or total amino solutions is a great option. If you have something that's very specific, like a lot of anxiety, depression, ADHD, OCD, PTSD, you're going to need those therapeutic doses. So, on top of just maintenance amino acids. But yes, Jen, I take maintenance amino acids every day as well.
So if someone's listening and they're like, I think I have an amino acid problem, like maybe they are anxious or low mood or low motivation or something like that. It would be best for them to be, instead of just taking a blanket one, be on the specific ones that they need for a little bit, and
Eh,
then they can go to maintenance.
Yes, absolutely. It will
Okay,
give
that
you
makes a lot of
faster
sense.
results that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I like that you do the questionnaire for testing because I have different practitioners that I have learned from, throughout like the decade of integrative medicine have different views on amino acids because the questionnaire seems more scientific to me because blood, if you test blood, a lot of these companies test blood for amino acids. And I'm like, aren't those going to be changing throughout the day? So I
Yes.
thought yeah. So I'm like, that doesn't make sense cognitively to me. So I like that it's a questionnaire because yes, it's not as objective as a blood test, but for me, it makes more sense because those amino acids can change. Yeah, do you know what I'm talking about? How some people they do
Oh,
the expensive
absolutely.
blood test,
Blood
and I'm like,
sugar.
that just doesn't make sense to me. So
Yeah.
my son personally, I just have him on a perfect amino. He'll swallow one a day. I can tell when he's taking it and when he's not.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
could tell with motivation, his dopamine. Now, say I'm gonna give you, like, a specific example, like kids, right? Like ADHD kids that obviously they probably need some amino acid therapy. Now, if you're giving them amino acids, you know what they should need, but they're still on screens or they're still doing things that, is long-term making them dopamine seeking and depleted. Can this, like, help combat that? Or is this, like, we have to change our, like, lifestyle too?
Well, I mean, there are lifestyle changes that need to happen, but when the brain is sufficient in the dopamine, they're sufficient in endorphins, you're not gonna seek that behavior. You're not gonna seek that hit.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
us women, scrolling on Instagram or TikTok or whatever it might be, if your brain is satisfied, you're not gonna have the desire to scroll.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I find myself scrolling. I'm like, and then I catch myself, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I will go take some amino acids because clearly I am depleted in some way, shape, or form. And then I'm like, oh, and I could leave my phone for days and not even think about it.
Hey, but we kind of count on people watching reels
We
for our
we do.
social
I
media. I'm
want
just
you to watch
kidding.
my reels. Yes. So just do it for
No, we
educational
want people
purposes.
to yeah, we want people to watch our content that it gives them life, it
Yes.
doesn't suck from them. I was just looking, I went to a talk last February and this pediatrician, she was talking about like for these young kids, she does dose tryptophan 500
Nice.
milligrams 3 times a day with
Yeah.
some other cofactors, because serotonin can't cross the blood brain barrier, tryptophan crosses and then serotonin's made in the brain. and 1% of serotonin makes it to the brain. And then our gut obviously produces the serotonin. But it was interesting because she was giving case studies on young girls that were like, so depressed and
Yeah.
just doing the tryptophan. They were off their, antidepressant medications and stuff. And I guess another question is like, we're seeing so much anxiety in kids too. They take the test, right? They take this questionnaire you have. Are you seeing a lot of them just low in tryptophan because of nutrient deficit, but also like just poor gut health? Or like, what do you think is causing all this?
Oh gosh, I think it's D all the above, Jen. I mean, our
Yeah,
food's depleted for one. Most kids don't eat enough protein. So they're just, and
right,
if we're talking teenage girls, they don't eat enough in general. So
right.
that's an anxiety trigger, which, then
Yeah,
they had the hormone disruption going on. So, I mean, there's so many different factors there.
yeah,
But I will say I have a lot of girls that start on the amino acids and then all of a sudden they'll send me a message like, my period came and I didn't even know it was coming. Like, 'cause
yeah.
their body's calmer, they have the nutrition, they're actually eating more, and all of a sudden your hormones are better, and they don't need to be on birth control.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like how you brought in the eating too, because going back to what we said earlier, amino acids, they're found in protein. And if we're not eating enough like animal protein, we're not getting the complete amino acids that we need to
Yeah.
make those things. And these younger girls are targeted in all the vegan
Oh
campaigns
my
too.
goodness. Yes, they are,
Um,
Jen.
yeah, it's hard. I'm glad my daughter loves her steak. She loves
Me too.
fillets her favorite. I used to be the same way,
Yep.
but yeah, it's
Definitely
tough.
think
So
through for anything else.
yeah, yeah. I mean, kids, it's hard on them. So yeah, so I love how amino acids, like, yes, your goal is to help mothers, but I think kids are so important too because if our kids aren't happy, that's going to be stress on us. So
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly.
So how has your faith shaped your approach to health and business? So how do you also connect women? Help them reconnect with their identity in Christ during this healing journey?
Yeah, I think that's so important, right? Because that's one of the reasons you were talking multifaceted reasons, why these things happen. And it's because we're not grounded in who we are. So a lot of the women I work with are Christians. And so they know Christ, they know they're on their way to heaven, but still that grounding in exactly who are they? What's their purpose in this life? And I think society certainly has not done a good job of building us women up by any means. But even the church, I think they've missed the mark in a lot of ways in not supporting that identity process. And we're his daughters, right? We are his daughters. And just to really understand that. And so I'm always trying to, uplift, the women that I work with. We go through Ephesians a lot,
Yeah.
and knowing who you are. I am loved, I am holy, I am sacred, I am a masterpiece, right? Because so many women have low self esteem because they don't understand who they are and who God created them to be.
Yeah, and there's such a grab for us to put our identity in things other
Other
than
than that,
Jesus.
yeah.
Yeah, and I fell for that. I mean, I was a Christian, but was the Holy Spirit was indwelling in me? I don't know. I question it.
That means
And now I have no question of my salvation, but it's my identity was being a doctor and then being a mom and then, like my identity was not in Christ and you can just get off a few degrees and then you're on a whole different island.
yeah, you are.
So,
And then the
yeah,
anxiety hits, the depression hits, you can't sleep.
there's
Yes,
no
we gotta
peace.
bring it back. We've gotta bring it back to that peace
Yeah.
that, it tells
Yeah.
us in Philippians to think about whatever is true, whatever is right, excellent, noble, praiseworthy, pure, all those things. Just think about those. And we get
Yeah.
so distracted and we forget to focus on the good things in our life instead of
Yeah.
trying to chase after something that God never called us to chase.
Yeah, it's such an important part of being a woman and understanding like our race. And, my big thing was I was kind of looking to the left and to the right instead of
And
straight,
it's
right? Keep your
yeah,
path straight and do not look to the left and the right. And one thing I feel like has helped me is just being in the word every day.
every
Like
day.
every day. Yeah.
Yes.
And that really you will have the words like hidden in your heart and it's beautiful. And we drive a lot more now that we're in Tennessee. Things are just
Oh,
further
sure.
away.
Yeah.
So we just listen to things in the car and podcasts for kids. And my 6-year-old just always wants to listen to Tiny Theologians. And
Oh,
it's so good to listen to. Yeah. Do you
I
like that
have
one?
heard that, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So
And
good.
he's always like, I want to listen to Tori. But it's great because I love how the mother talks to them and is so gentle. And I'm like, oh, this is good for me too. But
Yeah.
it's fun. So just any chance, that you can get to connect, I think is helpful. And that's gonna
Yes.
be and that's gonna be peaceful. We don't want to ramp
Yeah.
up our nervous system.
No, all of you who are listening, I mentioned I go through Ephesians. This wasn't anything that I planned to do. I feel like the Holy Spirit's telling me to do this, Jen, I have an Ephesians journal. It's actually in my store, but if you tell me you heard it on this podcast, I will give it to you for free. And it walks us through
Oh,
as women
beautiful.
through our identity in Christ. So it's 30 days. So if you want that, just message me on Instagram and I'd be happy to send it to you.
Oh, that's beautiful. What's your Instagram?
At Take Back My Brain.
Yeah. So you guys can look right on there. And that's a beautiful gift, especially, it will be around the holidays when this is
Mhm.
released. So I know that we all are it can be so busy. So
Yes.
what would you say are the biggest myths that you see around mental health and medications and the anxiety that you wish more people understood?
Yeah. Well, first of all, that it's a condition and a chemical imbalance, and it's not. Almost all the time, it's a nutrient deficiency. And if there is a chemical imbalance, there's probably a nutritional deficiency behind the chemical imbalance. So if we remove all those interferences, the brain can heal. So you don't have to live with PTSD and ADHD and anxiety and depression, OCD for the rest of your life. I feel like that's a lie straight from the pit of hell. And it's my goal to send it back there. And then
Yeah.
another myth would be, anxiety is your personality, and it's not. You
Yeah.
may be a more exuberant person or you may be more introverted, but anxiety is not your personality. I feel like it's
Mm.
something, it's a deficiency. It's straight from the pit of hell and it's keeping you from everything that God wants you to do and to be in this beautiful life that He's given us. And so if you
Yeah.
have anxiety, don't think that you have to live with it because you don't. And I
Mhm.
would say the other biggest myth is you don't need protein. So you have to have protein for brain health.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Give me all the protein. And, I was just thinking while you were talking, like, it's so sad because the people that struggle most, I feel, with the depression, anxiety, or like homeless,
Yeah.
population, stuff like that. Like, we signed up as a family to serve breakfast to a local place. And I'm thinking about like the egg dishes I'm going to make and stuff with like actual protein. And because
Yeah.
they're like, oh, you can just buy some donuts and stuff. And I'm like, absolutely not. They will get meat, they will get eggs, like they will be served and nourished. Like their body will have nourishment because I know it's easier just to like bake something or pick something up, but like we need to show our love to people through
Mhm.
nutritious food. And I'm really big on that. And I'm so thankful to the Lord that we have these chickens and are able to have these chickens because now I make eggs for everything. And it was funny because like I made this egg brisket bake for this clothing swap last week. And my son, my 13-year-old, he's like, "Did you make that?" He's like, "It was actually good." I'm like, "You tried some of that?" Because sometimes, like, they won't eat eggs. They're like, "We don't want to eat eggs because they're there all the time." So anyway,
Sure.
but think about that, like, if there's a mother that just had a baby and you're bringing a meal, bring them something with protein in it, you
Yes.
know? Yeah, like, I know it's a little more expensive, but maybe you could do a smaller portion and be like, "Hey, because it's protein, it's smaller portions, but it's more nutrient dense." And I think, if you are struggling out there with your grocery bill, Aldi has pretty good meat, local farmers, but focus on nutrient protein and then the sides around it,
Mhm.
like something like that. Cause I know it is more expensive, but it's where you want to put your money
You
is
wanna
the
put your
protein.
dollars there. Mhm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My daughter and I were just talking about that this morning too, because, there's a lot of food bank drives and all that kind of stuff, especially this time of year.
Right.
And we're going into the local grocery store and there's a big sack and you can buy this sack for $20 and it's gonna feed a family of 4. And in it is just crappy food.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I would rather spend, another $20 and make them an amazing meal that's,
Right.
like a roast and carrots and potatoes and, some eggs for sure.
Yeah.
I feel like we're just so used to feeding people cheaply. We think that as long as they have something to eat, then it is better than nothing.
Yeah.
However, it's not nourishing them and it's feeding this epidemic of anxiety, depression, and just darkness I feel like we have in our country. That doesn't
Yeah.
need to be there if we were better nourished.
Yeah, no, to back up to the amino acid, so you're saying that maybe if like a kid is a picky eater, if
Mhm.
you give them the appropriate amino acids, they are going to start eating like
They
more
are.
nourishing food. And you've
Yeah,
seen this.
I
You've seen
have
this.
thousands of
Okay.
times.
Can you yeah,
Yes.
give us some examples of this because I think mothers would love to hear this because we live in a world of picky eaters, right?
Oh, no, I totally understand that. So, well, I'll give you an example. A little boy is actually here in my office, and he just never ever could sit still. So, for one, he was super picky because his attention was off, for one. And so we just started giving him just a little bit of tyrosine. And his mom texted me a few days later. She's like, "You're not going to believe it. He sat and he ate a full meal." So sometimes it's not that they're picky. Sometimes it's the fact that they're just so distracted and they can't focus and they get tired of chewing. Really, honestly, that's what happens. I had a little boy tell me that one time. He goes, "I just don't like to chew." You
Yeah,
know?
well, and that oh my goodness, that makes me if we're not chewing, we're not developing our tongue and our
Exactly.
jaw. We're not yes, so
You're
it's
not
all
stimulating, the areas of your brain.
yes.
So
Yeah.
it all plays together. It sounds silly, but exactly, Jen. That is
Yeah.
how all that works. But they have to be able to focus enough to eat. Once
Mhm.
you give them more amino acids, their muscles don't get so tired. I know that sounds really silly, but if their muscles are tired in their jaw and they don't like chewing, but if you give them amino acids so they have nutrition so their muscles are stronger, those things. I've had other people with a lot of gut issues, and the amino acids don't have to be digested, right? So you have a lot of
Mhm.
these kids, I call them GAPSy kids, if you know the gut and
Mhm.
psychology syndrome diet or whatever. So they have a hard time digesting. They're super, super picky, but the amino acids don't need to be digested. So they're going to get the nutrition without their body having to work hard for it. And
Yeah.
over time, that is going to increase their appetite. And that happens in adults too. Like they don't have any
Yeah.
appetite, they start taking the amino acids, and all of a sudden they're hungry.
Yeah. Yeah, and so many times I'll have women, my patients that they're overweight and
Yes.
they have other things going on, but they're not hungry, so they're not
Mhm.
eating, so they're not getting the amino acids they need, they're not getting the nutrition, but they're still gaining weight. They're like, "I literally don't eat. I'm not hungry. I have to
Mhm.
force myself to eat." And and I'll tell them like, "Well, if you're gonna eat, you need to go on you need that protein." And I'm curious if you've seen an uptick with the shot, all the GLP-1s with, this causing maybe the depression and anxiety when people are on these is because they're not they're obviously not eating protein if they're
Right.
overdosed, which most of them are, and then they're not getting amino acids. So it's like double whammy.
It's a double whammy, and then your digestion slows down. So
Yeah.
the whole vagal pathway is being compromised, and so then the signal from the brain to the gut is disrupted. I mean, there's so
Mhm.
many factors there, Jen. It's like,
Yeah.
I am
And
not
really,
a fan.
I like GLP-1s done correctly. So,
They're
I
near the
just had
yes.
someone message me and they're not my patient yet, but they're like, they're on 15 units. I didn't know the milligrams. I have to see what she says. 15 milligrams or units, sorry, 15 units 3 times a week. And I'm like, you're not even supposed to be doing GLP-1s that many times a week. So, more is not better. More is
Right.
not better for many things. So, what about your method, the Calm Mom method? Do you have any success stories of women going through this?
Oh, absolutely. So I have this one woman who recently she was sitting here and she came in because her chest was so tight all the time and she was just anxious and she just could feel all this anxiety welling up in her multiple times a day. And she's a counselor, right? So she knows the tools, the practical tools to do all of this. And we were doing the amino acid, putting them under your tongue and just kind of waiting. And I gave her some tryptophan and she's been on and off of medication as well, and she'd never experienced this before. All of a sudden, she goes like my chest felt like it opened up, and it just like
Mm.
something released. And so she was on the amino acids about a week because we did it. I think I ended up with 3 of them for her. It was tryptophan, tyrosine, I think GABA, and she was on them for a week. And she messaged me. She goes, "This has been the best week of my adult life."
Aw.
And she's almost 40. So those beautiful things happen all the time in my office. I have a client now, I've been working with her for about a year, and she was on 5 medications when she came to see me, and all of
Mm.
those mood related. And it took us about 7 to 8 months to get off of all 5 of them, but the amino acids helped her tremendously. She didn't have any withdrawal issues. And that's the beautiful thing when you're coming off of medications, of course, work with your doctor because I don't take you off the meds. It has to be with your doctor. But the side effects, the withdrawal symptoms and stuff, I rarely have ever seen any when you're nourishing the body at the same time with the amino acids as you come off those medications. It's a
Hmm.
beautiful process.
Yeah, that's great. So, what amino acids have you seen depleted the most with someone that is on an SSRI like Zoloft or Prozac? Because I bet you those listening out them, probably a lot of them are on one of those.
Probably. Yeah. I would say serotonin. And this is the
Mm.
medication that's supposed to help serotonin, but they come, in the chart that I was talking that I use, I rate it on a scale of 0 to 10. 0, you never feel this. 10, you feel this all the time. There's 15 questions. There's going to be anywhere from 7, 8, nines. Most of them are still tens.
Mm. And then you would give them the tryptophan to
Correct. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
And this makes sense if you look biochemistry, everything, like it all makes sense. So how would you say amino acid therapy differs from supplements that like, boost the same, production or whatever? Or how would you say it's different?
So, yeah, I mean, you could use like, rhodiola or something like that. So it's going to help with serotonin, but it's not fixing the deficiency. It's just an herb that is
Mhm.
helpful and it does calm the system. And I use those with people as well, but it's not actually nourishing that particular neurotransmitter. So it's not nourishing the serotonin, it's just helping the body. So this way,
Mhm.
you don't have to consistently use it. You can fix the deficiency and kind of move on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Hmm.
So, what are three simple, practical things moms can do today to reduce stress and bring more calm into their homes?
Right. So one you could get, you could start on amino acids for one. So that's a given. But if we're talking just practical things that you can do every day in your home, one would be make sure you go to bed at the same time every single night. Like set your alarm to go to bed so that you don't forget. So all of a sudden you're like, I want to go to bed at 10 and you're all of a sudden it's midnight. So going to bed at the same time every single night helps to set that circadian rhythm. And that's going to help anxiety, depression. That's going to keep you calm. That's going to help regulate that nervous system. The next thing would be, get out in the early morning sunlight. I know that seems really simple. And we're in Iowa now and it's cold. And I don't necessarily want to go out, but I still go out every single morning. I'm outside for 45 minutes to an hour at least in the morning, just getting in that morning sunlight because that makes me feel so much better. And then that third thing would be increase your protein. Whatever protein you're eating right now, most of you are not eating enough, so double it and see how you feel.
Yeah, love my protein, that's for sure.
Mhm.
That's so funny. My husband, like, cause I had some protein earlier. I was just making a filet. I'm like, I'm gonna share this with Emery because we have been having these like protein hot chocolate drinks after. So I knew
Oh,
I was gonna have that. I knew I was gonna have enough protein, but he was like, Jenny, that's not enough protein. He was like all worried about it. He's like, he knows me too well. And I'm like, it's because we're gonna have this treat after. Anyway, we got some like really good peppermint whipped cream for it. Anyway. So
oh, this
I
is
I'm
hungry.
yeah, well, no, I'm really happy about this because it's like a bone broth protein mint chocolate, and my six-year-old who is more a protein picky eater, he which maybe I just need to give him some amino acids, actually figure out how to get that into him, but he likes it, so it's like what we do. He stirs it on the stove. Anyway, nice and cozy, right? It's that time of year to have some protein hot chocolate. So let's see where we can find you at. So we already spoke about your Instagram. Don't forget you can message Lori and get that free download. Where else can they find you in your podcast?
So my podcast is Take Back My Brain. And then on all my socials, I am at Take Back My Brain. So you can find me there, or you can go to my website, lauriehammer.com.
Awesome. Okay, now we're going to do quick rapid fire questions
Okay.
to end things. Okay. So, what would be your second career choice? If you weren't doing what you were doing now, what would you do?
I would want to be a stay-at-home mom, like
Aw,
full
that's cute.
time, not doing anything else other than just being a mom and a grandma right now.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. What is your favorite habit that rescues a tough day?
Ooh, taking an Epsom salt and like essential oil bath.
Yes. Yes,
And
definitely
then
can't beat.
listening to a good podcast or, listening to the Bible as I just lay in there and don't think about anything else.
Oh, that sounds great. What is one wellness rule that you happily break sometimes?
Ooh, I will go get gelato that has, maybe not organic sugar in it.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah,
that's fine. Yeah,
totally.
no, that's good.
Yeah.
And then last one, and it's one word only. What's the one word you want listeners to carry into this week?
Peace.
Yes, that's a good one. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I know that this podcast is so valuable and it's such good information. So if you're listening out there and you know someone that could benefit from hearing this today and listening to Laurie, please share this podcast. And we really appreciate our listeners. Thank you so much for your time today, Laurie. I appreciate it so
Thank
much.
you for having me, Jen.